Welcome to the Ranch and Table Podcast, where we discuss all things related to our Texas ranch and our Ranch to Table restaurant located in downtown Rockwall. I'm your host, Lee Wells. All right, welcome to another episode of the Ranch and Table Podcast. I'm Lee Wells, and today I want to talk to you about what I call the gift of entrepreneurialism. And I want to start out by saying that some people have this ability and some don't, and that's fine. Not all of us are company starters. Not all of us are people who are going to go out and risk taking on a new sector and a new job description and a new company and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about it. I had some feedback over the last several weeks, and I've mentioned in my book, I've mentioned in other podcasts and discussions about the number of companies that I've started, and had a guy this weekend say, well, could you take me through the different companies and kind of how you got to where you are today? And an absolutely great idea. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of what I've done, the journey that I've been on. And the first time I started out realizing that I was an entrepreneur. And I want to just say at the beginning that not everyone is going to be like me. Not everyone is going to want to do this. And that's okay. It's really okay. My father-in-law is one of the greatest men that I know, and he worked in the aircraft industry for all of his life, from when he was young all the way through to his retirement. Very, very well respected. He was able to have dinner with the sitting president. He oversaw work on Air Force One, several different Air Force Ones over the years. He worked on jets of Middle Eastern kings and just amazing stories. Folks like Reba McEntire's jet, Conway Twitty, Elvis Presley's jet. I mean, amazing things that he got to do. But he worked for someone else, another company. He worked for large companies most all of his life, and retired from a defense contractor out here in the Greenville area, and just amazing things that he got to do. And that just scratches the surface really of what he did. He is not an entrepreneurial type of a guy. He's not going to ever want to step out and start his own company. But that wasn't who he was. That wasn't how he was built. He was a man that knew his qualifications, and he knew his job very well. He knew the jobs of those under him very well. And he was able to make a wonderful career, retirement out of working for someone else. So when sometimes we think that entrepreneuring a new job or a new company is something that, is we just got to pat ourselves on the back and say how great we are. And the fact is, it just is who some people are and some people are not. My wife is an RN. She now works for Blue Cross Blue Shield. She's a corporate trainer for them. She trains other nurses and teaches them how to do their job. And she thinks I'm crazy for launching companies and doing the things that I do. She admits I would never do the things that you do. I don't know how you do it. Don't want to do it. And sometimes she doesn't want to watch me do it. So, it just takes all kinds of people, and one is not better than the other. And one has assets and liabilities, and one has, gifts and callings that others don't. And that's what makes the world go around. I think my wife and I are true opposites when it comes to this. And that's what makes us work so well. She is a lot like her dad. And she, in many ways, is her dad. They're both the top of their fields. They're both extremely intelligent, very loyal, very, very just amazing employees. no one ever had anything negative to say about my father-in-law at his job. No one's ever found anything negative to say about my wife at her job. But I'll just tell you, they're not entrepreneurs. They ended up making top pay, end up making top respect in their companies. And so there's no way my wife would ever, I don't believe she would ever want to start a company. It's just not who she is. And so it's my belief that some people truly are born entrepreneurs. And I've done enough research to know that that's a contested point. Some people don't think people are born that way. But I want to tell you a story. I teased this story the other day and talked about kind of how it first hit me. I was 7 or 8 years old. I didn't know anything about the world. I really didn't know anything about what my mom and dad did or anything at that point. I was young. I was in 3rd grade, I think. And so the very first time that I remember the rush of an idea that was going to be great, I thought it was going to be great anyway. And I thought it was going to be big. I thought it was going to be awesome. My brother was out with me one night, and we were partners in this thing that we were doing, this company we were starting. I was 7 years old. He would have been 5 or 6 if I was 7 or 8. So interesting fact, he and I have the same birthday, 2 years apart. So we both have April 17th as our birthday, but he's 2 years younger than I am. So, I put him to work, so to speak. And what I did, and this is so silly now, but as a 7-year-old, we were out at, my mom and dad had a restaurant, and they had opened a restaurant. We had lived in rural Oklahoma at the time, and they were in the restaurant working, and that's another story for another day. I'll tell that story some other day. But we were outside playing around, and we noticed inside the dumpster back there that someone had thrown away a bunch of cool stuff. It was almost new. Some of it was in the package, and it was different magazines and newspapers and just different things. I guess they had cleaned out a building and threw it in the dumpster. And so my brother and I jump in there, and we're throwing out all this unwrapped new stuff. And there was also some shelving units that were thrown away too. So we set the shelving units up. We set our merchandise up on it, and it was at night. I mean, it was already dark by the time we got it all set up, and no one was stopping by to buy it. But we didn't know that. I was excited. I felt this rush. I felt this hope. I felt this excitement, and I'll never forget it. As a 7-year-old kid, but I had this idea that this was going to work, and that why would anybody throw this good stuff away when it could be sold for a profit? And so people could say that entrepreneurs are not born, but I don't know that I had any training to that point to understand how that felt and where that came from. So, I mean, I'm not debating that on this podcast, but I just know what I know that I experienced myself. And so we set all this stuff up, and we were going to, make it big. It was going to be our allowance for the week or whatever. And Dad gets through inside, and Mom, they come out, and Dad says, what are you doing? Throw all that away. Throw all that back in the dumpster. What are you doing playing with that? That's a bunch of junk. Just throw it away. And so we did. Back then, you just did what your parents said. You didn't have a say so. And so my brother and I threw it back into the trash. And I'll just tell you, that's not the last time that I threw away a company and it felt like it just went right into the trash. But that day, something was born and came alive in me that day. And it's never died. It's never gone away. Several successful companies later, and I still love the rush. I still love the work. I still love the process of the next big idea. And so after high school, I went on and got a technology degree and graduated top of my class and got into the corporate workforce and worked for some tech companies and got into telecommunications at the time was real big. got into MCI, worked for them for a few years. WorldCom took us over. If you remember that, if you're old enough to remember the 90s, WorldCom took us over and destroyed the company of MCI. And after that, I went to another company and went to work for them, a startup company in technology and in telecommunications. And so the opportunity came for me after that last company went out of business that I worked for. They had to file bankruptcy. It was a downturn in the economy. I began this idea that I could maybe start my own company. I had an uncle who was into mine reclamation. So what that means is what he did was he would come in when a mine was covered up and restructured, maybe a coal mine. They would come in and work it over and make it rolling hills and pools, lakes, and then he would come in to that raw ground and seed it and mulch it and let it become reestablished as grass. And so he was doing that up in Oklahoma, and we of course were in Texas. And he said, you know what, there's probably great opportunity down there. So we actually got connected with Waste Management and worked. I got the contract to do all of the Northeast Texas landfills, and we worked to do that. My brother and I formed Wells Brothers Construction, and Waste Management was one of our largest contracts that we had. We revegetated the slopes once they put their trash in the landfill matter. Law says you have to come back in with so many inches and feet of soil, topsoil, and then plant that. And if you don't, the water, the rains will erode that top dirt away. So you have to put grass on top of that and grow it so that it will hold together and that erosion won't just wash that dirt right back off the hillside. And so that's what we did. We got into them, made a lot of money doing that. I actually built most of the municipal complex in Greenville, the sports complex, the softball field, several of the softball fields and soccer fields and some of that. We did that during owning that company. So we did some pretty cool stuff. But what happened was 9/11. 9/11 came along, and then the downturn of the economy happened. Presidential change happened, and the economy, just the bottom came out of the economy, and nobody was building. Waste Management said, we're suffering, we're losing money, we're going to take this inside. They took the contract away from us the next year, and then there wasn't enough work, and so we lost out on that deal, and eventually lost everything and had to start over. And so I know what it's like to have equipment taken away, and lost a house, lost cars, had to move back home. Had a young daughter. My daughter Kayla was young, and so me and my wife and my daughter moved back in with my mom and dad, and we rebuilt from nothing and started back up to just make it, to just survive. And so that was a devastating time in my life, but it was a learning time in my life. It really taught me a lot about what not to do, how to secure a company, how to be ready for downturns, how to watch the economy and be careful. It taught me a whole lot more than it hurt me. And so that, after losing everything, I had to start over, and I built a speaking company. And so we began to travel. I began to travel and speak. And so most of you know I'm a minister. I'm a pastor. I have a church. And so I began to speak and travel and talk in churches. And I was teaching a seminar to the department heads, and then I would speak on Sunday or however we set up the meeting. And so I would leave typically on a Wednesday morning early, fly out or drive out. And then I would be home either Sunday night late or Monday morning, Monday afternoon. And it really got old, leaving my wife, who was working, my kids, or my child at that point, and then being gone so much. So after doing that for a couple of years, about 3 years, we got busy enough. I got busy enough, stayed busy enough to get a motorhome and a Jeep Commander, and we sold off everything that we had, and we moved all that stuff, what we could, what we needed, into the motorhome, and we took off. And for the next 3.5 years, I spoke on average 48 weeks a year, coast to coast. I mean, all over the United States, Alaska, just doing what I did, speaking every week. And one of my maximum number of times, I think I hit 8 times in 1 week that I spoke. And that was a tough week on the voice. But anyway, I built the speaking company. I built that ministry up to be full-time over the years and did that for a living. And after doing that for about 7 years, I realized my kids were getting older. We were homeschooling my oldest at the time, and we moved back home. We parked the motorhome back in the Greenville, Rockwall area, and launched Landmark Fellowship Church. So if you're counting, Wells Brothers Construction was number 1. My speaking company was number 2. And then number 3, we opened and launched a brand new church in Rockwall, Landmark Fellowship Church, in 2011, August of 2011. Started with just family and grew it to what it is today. And I still do that. And then number 4, after doing that, getting the church up and going, I created a marketing company. I went to work for a couple of companies along the way, just contract labor and doing things just along the way to help things out, help finances and stuff. But really felt like I needed to do something on my own again. That fire inside of me said that I can do better working for myself on the schedule I had than working for a company, clocking in, clocking out. So even though those companies were really good for me and really good to me, I began a marketing company, and I began to market website builds and social media work, social media ad campaigns and structures for nonprofits and various ones to work. So we built websites. My company built websites all over North America, Canada, just all around, and was very successful. Partway through that company, if you're counting, this is going to be number 5 company, I opened a new company, and it was providing HD video for conferences and events. And so as an offshoot of the marketing that we were already doing, now we had another company that we could come in and do HD video. We got up to 7, 8, 9 cameras at once. I think it was 7 cameras, and then we would have another switcher. So I think it was 9 cameras that we could get total into that system and switched and then sent up. If you've seen the big screens, if you're at a conference or concert, the big screens that everyone can see that are in the back and in the balconies and all that, we would run the cameras and videos that would feed those screens, and then also feed at that time either CDs or DVDs or jump drives, hard drives, and we could capture events, and then they could turn around and sell that content or whatever. And so company number 5 was my HD video company. And then in 2017, my father passed away, and we took over the ranch operation. And it wasn't long before the concept of whole ground beef came along. And so in number 6, I started Wells Cattle Company Beef and started selling beef to the public. And then 1 year after that, in September of 2018, we launched Wells Cattle Company Burgers and Pies. And so company number 7 is the restaurant that we own right now. We still sell beef. We still have the ranch. We still have the ranch operation, the cattle company, and then now we have the restaurant to serve that beef through. And so I was able to sell my marketing company off, and then I was able to sell my HD video company off. And so both of those were successful. They turned into long-term investments, short-term investments. And so with that, it is able to be a success. I mean, I can't run everything. I can't keep doing everything, but I think they came to a good conclusion by selling them off and being able to take that money or that trade out and be great for the future. So those are the things that got us to this point where company number 7 was a restaurant. Now, company number 8, because of the ranch that we own, I found a all natural liquid feed that we feed our cattle, and it's a supplement feed that is a liquid feed. And I had a guy bringing it down from Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma, and filling our feeders up, and we got to a point where we had more feeders than he could feed out or load out in a load, and it just got to be harder and harder for him to make the trip down. And so I was kind of forced into just opening my own division and my own distributorship. And so a couple years ago, we opened North Texas Pro Energy Feeds and bought the tanks and storage, and now we get truckloads of feed, and then we supply other local ranchers with that feed as well. That's company number 8. And then I wrote a book, and I've just happened to have one right here if you've never seen it before. Burger Brilliance, and of course you know about this if you listen to the podcast. The reason I started the podcast was to be able to talk to you about this book and the concepts in the book. But as I wrote the book and got to the finish line, looked into publishing, and publishers wanted at minimum $10,000 to publish my book. And I don't begrudge them the money and the effort and the time it takes to do the work. It's just a big number. And so I went into researching what it would take to publish my own book and figure out what it would take to really do this without spending that kind of money. And it was a lot cheaper. Naturally, I just started my own publishing company. And so far, I have one book that's been published through my publishing company. But it's a legitimate publishing company, and that gives me rights to sell on Amazon and sell on barnesandnoble.com and Walmart.com and international sales. I have books that have been sold now in at least 2 other countries that I know of. And so because of starting that company and structuring it the way that I did, it's not a self-published book. It is a published book through a publishing company. And so it can sit on the shelf of other places. It's also in 5 different stores in the Rockwall area, down in the downtown area. I'm so thankful to be in different boutiques and bookstores. And of course, we have it at our restaurant as well. But that's company number 9. So company number 9 is a legitimate company. It's my Wells Ranch Publishing Company. Now, I don't know how much I'm going to do with that. I don't know how much work I'm going to really do through that company. But reordering books, which I've already had to do once, was done through the company itself. And I can reorder books and do whatever I want to do. If I have a second version of this book, which actually there's 3 versions of this book right now. There is the hardback, which I show you here. There is I'm going to reach it here if you're watching me. There is a paperback version of it as well. And then there's an ebook. So there's actually 3 versions, 3 different ISBNs on this one book. So really, as far as the company's concerned, I've published 3 books. Even though the contents of the book are the same, it's 3 different ISBNs and 3 different books. So anyway, it's more than one, and it didn't cost me, nearly the $10,000 that it would have cost to go through some other publishing company. And then number 10, my 10th company, I'm on number 10, and this is number 10. This year I've launched LeeWellsOfficial.com, and it is a coaching and keynote company. And so I want to go out and speak. I've already spoken once this year at a business luncheon in the Rockwall area. It was an honor to be able to speak at the Rockwall Area Small Business Association luncheon. I think we had, I don't know, 60, 70 people. I don't remember. I didn't get a head count, but every table was full, and it was an awesome event. That is going to be posted on my website, Lee Wells Official, if you want to hear that talk. It was a 20-minute talk about customer service and customer retention. And so if you're interested in that, you can always listen. And one of these days, I may run it as a podcast if I run out of time or have a guest cancel or some kind of weather event happen. I may have to use it as an official podcast, but we'll see if that ever happens. It'll be available on my website later this week. Anyway, that's number 10. So that company has a website of its own, leewellsofficial.com. And on that website, I mentioned already in the podcast a couple weeks ago, it has my book, it has the podcast link and information, and then, of course, keynote speaking information, as well as the coaching initiative that I'm launching right now, which is going to be a for-profit coaching event and curriculum. And so that's going to be available to restaurant owners and business owners who want to do things differently, look at things differently, have new ideas. And it's going to be 50 lessons that come to their phone or device, whatever their device of choice is. And it'll be a 15-minute lesson a week. They can look at it, listen to it, put it into their life, see if it fits. And then next week will be a different concept or idea or culture. And then 50 of those. And I believe that taken from the experience that we have seen at our restaurant, that can translate into good things for other people and more success. So those are the 10 companies. I've been asked several times, what are the 10 companies? What are the 8 companies? And now it's up to 10. And that's the journey that I've been on. I've lost. I've built and sold. I've built and traded off. I've built and built some more. And right now we're looking at perhaps opening a food truck permanent location. I don't know a timeline on that. It all comes back down to hiring management and employees and getting all set up. But that would be like a second location for our restaurant, and it would be farther east out in the Caddo Mills area. So we're working on some things that are exciting this year. We're continuing to grow the ranch and the number of cattle, the various efforts that we do here, trying to do better every day at providing better beef every day. And I think that we're on track to do even better than we have before. For those that don't know, we butchered about 30 to 35,000 pounds. They're getting the numbers for me at my processor, about 35,000 pounds of ground beef this last year, which is on track for what we did in 2022 as well. And so that's a lot of hamburgers. That's a lot of hamburger meat. That's a lot of work that has to happen on the ranch. A lot of hay that has to be baled. A lot of wheat fields that have to be planted and tended to. And so I want to tell you today, but as I kind of wrap up, there's a few thoughts on being an entrepreneur that I wanted to leave with you. And I want to tell you what an entrepreneur is not. A lot of times people think that entrepreneurs start their own business because maybe they can't work for someone else. Well, I just can't work for anybody else. I'm going to just work for myself. I think that's kind of a myth, because successful leaders are great followers. I want to say that again so you make sure you get it. Successful leaders are great followers. They know their place. There have been times where I had to fall in line and I had to follow the leadership of bosses and directors and vice presidents. And there were times where my say didn't matter too much. I had to fall in line with the corporate structure and strategy. And I did very well with that. Successful leaders are great followers. I was the youngest senior engineer in the history of the company that I was with. I was 21, 22 years old with the senior engineer title, which was unheard of at the time. But that was because I was a good employee, and I'm a great employee when I'm employed. For MCI, I was handpicked for the highest profile project of 3 years running in the engineering department, I was having to report into the vice president of engineering for MCI. That is one, two, three. That is 4 steps up the food chain. You have your team lead, you have your department manager, you have your senior manager, your director, then the VP. So that's actually 5th spot up, and I was down below that. So to have such a high profile and then to win awards as I did, you have to be a good employee. So to say that I'm an entrepreneur and I start my own companies because I can't work for someone else, that's a false statement. That's a myth, because successful leaders are great followers. I have worked hand in hand with people for years, and I don't think I would be successful today in my businesses and in my efforts if I didn't work well with people. So it's just not always the case that someone can't get along or can't listen to someone else or whatever that myth might be. Number 2, a lot of times people say, well, if I work for myself, I'd work a lot less. I think that that's a misnomer as well. Some people say, I'd be on vacation 3 or 4 times a year if I had the vacation time and I work for myself, or I'd sleep late in the mornings, or I stay out all night, or whatever people would say. I just need to tell you that you don't work less when you run your own company. You work more than 40 hours a week. You work more than most people with a regular 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job. I jokingly say, man, I remember what it was like when I used to work that 40-hour part-time job, because I hadn't worked 40 hours and I can't remember how long. So it's not because of laziness or working less that someone would want to open their own business. If they did that and they're an entrepreneur because of that, they would probably most likely fail, because it takes so much more work and effort to be successful. You don't just get to clock out whenever you're an entrepreneur. You're working. It's on your shoulders. You're making it happen. Number 3, people say, well, and I just want freedom. I just want freedom. I want to open my own company and start my own thing to be free from, the 9 to 5, or free from the bosses, or free from the corporate drive into the office. And there are some benefits. I'm running this podcast right now in one of my offices, and I don't have to report to anybody right now, but it's also after hours. I've been working all day. I've been on the phone. I've been conference calls. It's not necessarily freedom like you think freedom is. The case can be made that we are the least free of businesses and business people in the world. We're probably the most tied down whenever it comes to being an entrepreneur. We have to really work hard to schedule vacations, or we don't get them. Between our girls' school, our work schedule, my wife she works. And so my wife's ability to take off when she can, and then my ability to shut things down or get away, it's almost easier not to take a vacation if it wasn't such a high priority for our kids and our own mental stability. I don't think we would, just because there's not as much freedom as you would think. And then number 4, some people say a business owner only thinks about money, and it's all about money, and you're just all about getting as much money as you can get. And I think if I were more money focused, I would still be leading a technology group in Dallas. I made great money as a 20-year-old, 21, 22-year-old kid, 23-year-old kid. I made more money than a lot of people 2-3 times my age. And if I would have stayed in that, and I would have continued to climb and continue to do well, there's no doubt in my mind that I would be a director or VP or whatever next step was there. If I was a senior engineer at 22, chances are I wouldn't still be that. And so if it were about money, I would be making a lot of money at some big company. But when you own your own business, when you start your own business, when you have this fire inside of you to see something created that you believe in, money really goes way downhill because you're the one having to finance and you're the one having to invest and you're the one that's not going to get the check just every week. I mean, you're going to pay your employees first. I pay my employees first. There's no way I would take a dime if I couldn't make my employees' checks good. Of course, I'm going to make sure that happens. So money has actually go way down on the priority list when you reach out and launch out and do an entrepreneurial journey like this. So I don't know. Those are just a couple things, four different things that I just came to mind that a lot of times people say, oh man, I'd love to do it because of these reasons. And those are the reasons a lot of times that don't work out quite the way you want them to. So, being an entrepreneur is I don't know. I don't want to know if it's a calling or not, but it's definitely something that it comes alive inside of you, and then you believe in it, and then you have to put the effort into it to make it happen. And I don't know where it comes from. I really don't. I don't know why some people do and some people don't. I believe that that's all in the design. If we were all starting new companies, the world would not work. Just like if we were all working for someone else, the world would not necessarily work. We wouldn't have Tesla and we wouldn't have Apple and we wouldn't have some of these big companies that we have if someone didn't at some point start it. So it takes a balance of all of us getting along and doing the things that we're called to do. But that's a little bit of insight into what my journey has looked like, some of my losses, some of my wins. And I really do appreciate all of you who tune in and listen to the podcast. It really is cool to watch the download number just climb and climb. And every time that number ticks up, I think, man, someone else is listening. That is really cool. Very fulfilling to know that somebody is maybe watching for it to come out. That's just flattering. That's amazing, humbling, really cool. And so thank you so much for listening to the weekly podcast. Like I said before, in a couple other podcasts, give me some feedback. Let me know. Some of this content today came from feedback from those that I've talked to about the podcast and about what I've said and done, and people who've read the book and talked about some of that. So just if you want to, there's a form on the website, Lee Wells Official. You can get to me there. You can get to my email. There's a contact and about page on that website if you go to it, and it has all of my different social handles and ways to get a hold of me. There's I don't know, 9, 12 different ways to get a hold of me, and so just pick one and shoot me some thoughts. Give me some ideas on what you want to hear. Talk to me about what you think, past episodes, what you've liked. I have some great guests coming up in the next week or so. It's going to be a lot of fun to sit down and watch. And I don't want to tell you right now because schedules sometimes change. I don't want to necessarily mention it yet, but this next week should be a really cool episode. Just really good people. I've had some really great folks on in the past. So I'll quit rambling and get off here today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this podcast journey. I'm Lee Wells, saying have a great, great week.